What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football home over at fakepigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You can follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me tonight, it's Jared Smola from Draft Sharks. What's up, Jared?
What's going on, Kyle? Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Always have a good conversation when I have you on, and figure we should get on and talk about your SFB team. Obviously, I've been trying to hit a few different owners and kind of see what people are thinking going in and what their strategy was, and it's really interesting you can really see the kind of strategy people have and the kind of fantasy they normally play. Like dynasty owners, a lot of young players, DFS guys, a lot of stacks, a lot of like GPP types lineups. I guess going in, was there a specific strategy you had, certain players you wanted, anything like that you were going in with before the draft?
So this league is so unique in the scoring system, the starting lineup requirements, the fact that there's 900 teams in it that you're trying to beat out. So it's so different than any other draft we do all year. So honestly, I trust my projections. I trust the Draft Sharks MVP board, which sort of helps compare players at different positions. And I really follow that and try to take best player available as much as possible.
Yeah, and you can put in like just whatever unique league scoring into that MVP board, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So, it handles this scoring system. And then again, it helps compare players across positions, which is very important in this setup. And it also takes into account the players you've drafted already and your team needs to sort of make suggested picks at each round.
Yeah, and I think that's a great tool. If you're in a league that your league changed the settings, or you're joining a new league and it's different than typically play. I think it gives owners a good idea of what kind of, maybe I should think about this way, and it gives you a little bit of help there. So definitely subscribe to Draft Sharks. Obviously, get the tool, but then you get Jared's great stuff and a whole bunch more. But so I guess you went Zeke off the top, 105. Was it just you were looking at best player available, and he was the one that was kind of left there for you?
Yeah, so I was praying that one of those top four running backs would make it to me at 5. Because, again, based on our projections, based on the MVP board, there was a big drop-off in overall value behind Gurley, Bell, David Johnson, Zeke Elliott. And actually, Zeke Elliott comes out ahead of David Johnson in this scoring setting, according to our projections. So I was very happy to get him at 5.
Yeah, and are you in your projections? Do you expect a lot of catches from Zeke this year?
I do, yeah. He's been efficient as a pass catcher through 2 seasons. I think he ranks 3rd among all running backs with 50-plus targets over the past 2 seasons in yards per target. It's just been a volume issue for him, and they've lost a ton of targets with Dez Bryant and Jason Witten's departure. So I do think you see Zeke not get to the David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, even Todd Gurley level of target volume, but I think he's going to get closer to that group. And then you factor in the rushing production, and I think, again, he's right there with David Johnson for that number 3 spot.
Yeah. I mean, we saw the year DeMarco had where he got all that volume, and I think that's very much of the realm of outcomes. That's very in play for Zeke, and when you're in a league like this where you're trying to beat 900 teams, I think that's a nice advantage to have. Let's talk about your quarterbacks, because you took 2 and only 2, but they were 2nd and 3rd picks. You went Brady, you went Cam. So this is super flex, obviously 6 point per passing touchdown, but the 4 point INTs, the first downs on the ground, a little unique settings for sure. You wanted to lock up the studs, and you felt comfortable with your 2 guys once you did that.
Yeah, I actually did not go into the draft planning to take any early quarterback, let alone 2 of them. Again, I'm pretty flexible with this setup. When it got to my pick, they were the top players on my board. I will say in the 3rd round, I really wanted Joe Mixon, but he got sniped 1 pick ahead of me, so settled for Cam Newton. But I feel good about it. I obviously like having 2, guys I feel safe about finishing as top 5 quarterbacks this season, and I think at running back and wide receiver, I'm still solid. Tight end's the spot I think I'm shaky at.
Yep, and when you're in a league like this with this many teams in a super flex, there's going to be a spot, and you're just going to have to adjust. And I guess when you play in a tight end premium league, or like something like that, do you put more emphasis on getting that position, or do you think maybe it kind of balances out by, by the tight ends getting a little bit of a boost, maybe guys, a Virgil Green, a Vance McDonald like you took. I took Luke Wilson. Can maybe jump up a little bit and be a little more reliable on a week to week basis?
Yeah, it's so tough to know when to target tight ends in those type of leagues, like the FFPC. I struggled for years in FFPC leagues because I just didn't know when to pounce on tight ends. There's not a lot of good ADP data out there, so
Yeah.
and every draft's so different with the tight end premium, so it can be tough to know. In general, I am trying to lock up, ideally Gronk.
Yeah.
And I briefly considered taking him at 5. If the top 4 running backs had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, I might have given Gronk some serious consideration there.
Yeah.
Um, but this year I do think there's only 7, 8, maybe 9 tight ends you can feel really good about. And once those guys are off the board, you're sort of just throwing darts, I think, and hoping you can just land one reliable starter.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of with you in terms of the quarterback. I went in expecting to take maybe one in the top, 40 picks or so, and then kind of see how the draft board fell. But when I came on the clock I had the 312 and the 401. I took Cam and Pat Mahomes. Once again, I'm shooting for that upside and a chance to try and take down this whole league. But locking in those two guys obviously have the rushing ability. The interception potential does scare me a little bit, but hopefully that balances out. And I did lock up Jameis Winston, so I'm pretty happy to have a third quarterback. Are you? I know you do have 2 picks left. Is quarterback even on your register, or basically anyone who's worth drafting pretty much gone by now?
Yeah, I never really considered taking a third, which maybe is a mistake. I mean, I know there's not many teams out there with only 2 quarterbacks, but Brady and Newton are in my
Yeah.
starting lineup obviously every week, and they're 2 durable guys.
Hmm.
And then on their bye weeks, it's super flex, so I can throw a running back or a wide receiver, or tight end in that flex spot. So I'm pretty set with these 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think it's interesting, and I know like Ty Miller, when he won SFB, won it with just Matt Ryan as his quarterback basically down the stretch. So,
Oh,
and that's I love about SFB is it's so unique. You could have guys going tight end heavy. I've seen teams that have like Gronk and Kelsey and Ertz. Some teams that have gone quarterback crazy. What was your favorite pick? What was the pick that you're like, man, I feel really good about the value I got here, or just really excited about the potential upside?
I like a couple of my Packers there in rounds 10 and 11, getting Jamal Williams at running back 40, and I especially like Jamal Williams, how he fits on my team, because I did draft Mark Ingram earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Ingram obviously with the 4-game suspension, so Williams, I think will at least start for me those first 2 weeks with Aaron Jones on suspension there. So. And then from there, there's a chance that he sort of takes that job and runs with it. So I like the value at running back 40. I especially like how he fits with my team. And then Randall Cobb at wide receiver 43. If he's going to be the Packers' number 2 wide receiver, and I'm fully expecting that. Green Bay's number 2 wide receiver has sort of consistently produced top 30 PPR numbers with upside, well beyond that. So to get him at wide receiver 43, I was pretty happy about.
Yeah, that's definitely a home run for sure. It's pretty funny. I have your draft board right up next to mine, and we seem to be agreeing a little too much. I took with my 9th round pick, I took a Manny Sanders, who you took 9th round, and then I took Jamal Williams in the 10th round. Obviously you got a little better value at RB40, whereas mine's 34, but 10th round, I feel good, and I think to your point, I feel like at least he'll give me a strong start, and then kind of we'll see how things shake out. It is really interesting. You can look at all the different drafts, and some people have gone Aaron Jones first, Jamal Williams first, even a couple leagues went Ty Montgomery first. So that's a kind of interesting situation. We'll have to definitely keep an eye on. Is there a pick you've made, or that you're like, oh, I don't know about that pick, or kind of regretted it, or not as optimistic about it as when you made the selection?
Well, Tyreek Hill's a funny guy because I feel like I haven't said a single good word about him all offseason, because I just think he's overvalued when he goes around wide receiver 10, which
Yeah.
is where his ADP is. But I got him at wide receiver 17.
Yeah.
And again, I'll never say I won't draft a player. It all depends on price. And I think Tyreek Hill at wide receiver 17, that's about where he makes sense. I'm not in love with the
Yeah.
pick, but it's just funny. It's a guy I haven't drafted once all offseason, and then here in SFB I get him.
Yeah, it's funny too because like he was a guy I was gung ho about, and then listening to you've kind of put some stuff on Twitter, and I've started to pump the brakes a little bit on it, and here you go taking Tyreek Hill. It's
Yep.
pretty funny. Yeah, but I mean, that was kind of my thinking with Pat Mahomes is in your if you look at your team, you have T.Y. Hilton, Tyreek Hill, two receivers that if they play up to their ability level, can be like big time game changers, big time league winner type players, and so I wanted to piece that. Obviously, I took Mahomes. Is there? I guess who's your biggest upside guy? Is it Jamal Williams, assuming he gets the role all year long and becomes the Packers feature back?
Yeah, just to go back to the Hilton Hill thing. That does scare me a bit that my top
Mhm.
two wide receivers are so volatile week to week.
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, this is a 900 team league, and when you get into that, that postseason, if I can get some explosive weeks out of Hilton and Hill, that's the sort of thing that can push my team to the very top. So
Yeah.
I like it for this format. For a standard 12 team league, I probably wouldn't pair those two guys as my top two wideouts. Cameron Meredith is a guy I am excited to have on this team. Obviously, some risk with him coming off the knee injury in his first year with the Saints, but got him at wide receiver 49. If he can lock up that number 2 job in New Orleans, I think he'll crush that price tag. And not to give too much away here, but I do have 2 picks left, and with one of them, I'm going to try to get Traquan Smith
I like
as
it.
sort of a hedge on Cameron Meredith.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit. And when you're these are 22 round drafts, so when you're getting towards the bottom, it does get a little murky. But yeah, there's definitely some interesting names down towards the bottom. I took Taywan Taylor with a kind of a hope that he becomes that. I took Rashad Penny early, so I backed that up with Chris Carson. So it definitely as they start to wrap up, it gets a little interesting for sure.
Yeah, it does.
Uh, yeah, I mean, can we talk about Deshaun Jackson for a second because that's a guy that we were all excited about. Like, I was thinking about the fantasy football community kind of as a whole and how like wildly we swing from one opinion to the other, and one year we'll be so high on a guy, and the next year we don't want him at all. And I don't love Deshaun Jackson, but he's another one of those guys that are kind of in that Hilton Tyreek Hill mode where if things go well, if Jameis gets back and looks good and he's chucking it down the field, Deshaun Jackson could have some huge weeks down the stretch that make real difference.
Yeah, he actually is sitting like 40th, I think, in our wide receiver rankings, and I passed him up multiple rounds when he was, the top guy on my board, definitely the top wide receiver on my board, and he just kept dropping to get him at wide receiver 59. I mean, I'm as excited as anyone about Chris Godwin. Actually considered taking Godwin, with my next pick, ended up passing on him. But yeah, at wide receiver 59, 15th round, if Godwin does pass Deshaun Jackson, I just dump him. It's not a huge loss.
Yeah, no, I like that call quite a bit. You took Jordan Wilkins, obviously, a late round flyer, but I've kind of gone back and forth with him potentially taking over that job. Obviously, Marlon Mack was dealing with a little bit of injury issues. There's a few names. If Luck is back, though, there is going to be a running back that should be, especially as much as they can get in the red zone and have scoring opportunities, that should be really reliable. Do you think Wilkins can be that guy?
I think he might, and that's sort of, I think, the type of running backs you should be targeting with these late round picks. Someone who, if things break right, they can really, really help your team. And I think, that's the case with Wilkins if he wins the starting job there. The Colts also obviously added Quentin Nelson too, so I think the offensive line is going to be a lot better. So whoever's the lead ball carrier there, and I do still think Marlon Mack's the favorite, but
Yeah.
Wilkins will definitely be given an opportunity. So I think at running back 63, definitely worth a shot.
Absolutely. Is there anybody else in that kind of range that you've been targeting in best ball leagues and other deeper formats that you think, if everything shakes out right, this guy could be a guy I'm using, maybe not every week, but in a flex role or, bye weeks or whatnot?
I mean, just looking at my SFB team, John Ross is a guy I've taken in a bunch of best ball leagues. I mean, the guy was what, the seventh overall pick just a year
Mm-hmm.
ago, and now he's going in the 18th round of drafts. And obviously, the rookie year was a disaster, but he wasn't healthy very often. And there's still plenty of opportunity in Cincinnati. With only Brandon LaFell to beat out for the number 2 spot.
I mean, have you seen Brandon LaFell play football? It might be a little bit of a challenge. No, but yeah, he's another one of those guys that 1 year, a year ago people were giving up first rounders to go get him in the draft, and now nobody
Right.
wants him with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean the history. I know the history of rookies who have done, literally nothing, like John Ross
yeah,
is not good. But again, we're talking about wide receiver 74 here.
yeah,
I think you look at the guys going around him. I mean, just in this draft, Danny Amendola, Cole Beasley, Jermaine Kearse. I think Ross easily beats them in upside.
yeah, 100%. And this was a Bengals team that was a complete mess last year. No AJ Green. Obviously, the running game was having issues. Dalton wasn't very good. So there was a lot that needed to go right. And if things kind of get turned around this year, I could definitely see John Ross, being impactful, even if it's just a couple deep balls a game, and he's going 3 for 83 for 90 and a touchdown. And that's a nice week. Let's talk about the Bengals, because a second ago you mentioned what's
Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon.
Yep.
Talk to me about him, because he is a guy that I have not been able to get on board with this year, and I know there's some people that love Joe Mixon. I guess talk to me about your optimism and kind of what you think we will see from him this year that makes you so excited.
Yeah, so I'm sort of buying the Bengals, on the cheap this season, in large part because last year they ran the fewest offensive snaps in the NFL. I think they were down at like 920 something, and it was about a game and a half's worth of offensive snaps fewer than they averaged over the previous few years. So that alone, I mean, take everyone on the Bengals and add another game to a game and a half
Mm-hmm.
worth of production, to their fantasy total. I think we can sort of do that this season for starters. So that's obviously good news for Mixon. I still believe in him as a player. I was high on him, coming out of Oklahoma. One semi-disappointing season in the NFL, as a rookie, isn't going to totally put me off that. And then I also think the offensive line should be better. They made a couple additions, Cordy Glenn in the trade with Buffalo, and then drafting Billy Price. So I think the
Yeah.
block should be better ahead of Mixon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the opportunity is definitely there. We should see strides from him this year, assuming the offense is relatively healthy. Any interest in Mark Walton if you miss out on Mixon, or if you're drafting him late, or do you think it's pretty much Mixon or bust?
I mean, I think it's Mixon or Bernard. I think if you
That's
draft Mixon, taking Bernard at running back 40 or whatever he's going, I think makes some sense, because if Mixon does get off to a slow start again, I like Gio Bernard. He's a good player. So if Mixon gets off to a slow start, maybe Bernard takes over eventually.
yeah. I don't know. I like Gio. You expect Gio just to get the full time load and be a 20 touch type game.
Yeah, I mean the Bengals have never viewed him in that light, which is
Yeah.
disappointing to me because I do think he can do it. He had some big-ish games down the stretch last season, when Mixon was out there. So
Yeah.
I think he can do it. Whether the Bengals give him that workload, well, who knows?
Yeah, he's kind of in that Duke Johnson thing for me. Like, I feel like they can both be guys that if they got the workload, they'd be fine. But the teams haven't done it, and I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, again, I mean, I think it's Mixon there.
Yeah.
But if not, I think Gio gets the first shot at it ahead of Mark Walton.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I feel like I'm putting my chips on other guys, whether that's Gio, whether that's Mark Walton. I don't know. I loved Mixon coming out of Oklahoma, but last year definitely rubbed me the wrong way.
I wish he was coming a bit cheaper in drafts.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd think after such a disappointing rookie season, he'd be going a bit later. But
It's really interesting because normally it is like that, but Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cook, their prices have been very high for as little as we saw last year.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So with your projections done and the season approaching, is there a name or two that have really surprised you as you've gotten a lot more excited as the season's come along, or your projections were really much higher on them than you thought they would be?
Yeah, we've talked about a bunch from here already. Joe Mixon's one of them. Randall Cobb's one of them. Emmanuel Sanders is a guy I really like. He's just coming at a discount, I think, based on a season last year where even beyond the crappy quarterback play, he had that ankle injury for a lot of the season.
Yeah.
If Case Keenum can just be average, I think Sanders returns the top 20 level production, which is where he was the previous few seasons.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that Broncos offense kind of in general. Like, obviously, Demarius and Manny Sanders. I'm really high on Jake Butt. He's a guy I've been drafting a lot of
Hmm.
best ball at the end, and I think I took him in this league. And then I guess do you think Cortland Sutton or Deshaun Hamilton can be anything, even if they're waiver wire fodder as the season kind of goes along
I like them both long term, but I don't think they're going to be
in
fantasy
year
factors
one?
this season. Yeah,
Yeah.
barring an injury to Thomas or Sanders. I mean, for as long as Thomas and Sanders have been in Denver, they've dominated targets. I sort of think that'll be the case again this season.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm with you. And then the running back there is who's your pick? Is it Devonta Freeman or Devontae Booker? Is it Royce Freeman? Is it some combination?
It's definitely Royce Freeman for me.
Yeah,
I've seen enough of Booker at this point to know he's not a good runner. He can do it in the passing game, so that could ding Freeman's value if Booker sort of maintains the lead pass catching role there. But I think Freeman is going to win that starting job by week 1.
wow, yeah. I think there's I think a lot of people are on board with that. I'm really curious to see as kind of redraft data starts filing in. We're in July and August where he's going in drafts because I feel like with all the rookies, with all the success from rookies last year, he might go a round or two higher probably than he probably should. But once again, running if he gets the volume, he gets the work, it could be a big reward.
Yeah, I like Freeman, but I'm not sure I've drafted him once yet because, like you said, he is going sort of high. He goes like mid 20s among running backs, which I
Yeah.
think is fair, but it's not a big value.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Jared, tell everyone where they can read your work, check out your podcast, and subscribe to Draft Sharks.
Yeah, DraftSharks.com, projections, MVP board, bunch of articles. Just posted our comeback player of the year today, so you can check that out. And then you can follow me on Twitter at SmolaDS.
Make sure you follow Jared. Make sure you subscribe to Draft Sharks. You won't regret it. And as the season approaches, as drafts approach, the MVP board will definitely be a nice, useful tool as you get going. So, Jared, thanks again for joining me, and we'll have to talk as the season approaches.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, talk to you later.